The year is 1941. Hitler has unleashed his hordes across all of mainland Europe. After failing to defeat Britain in the year prior, he now turns his attention eastwards towards his main objective, that being to bring down and defeat Stalin's Soviet Union. On August 22nd, Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history, is launched. 3.8 million Axis troops invade across 1,800 miles of land, stretching from the Baltic down to the Black Sea. Barbarossa was planned to claim victory within 6 weeks in a swift campaign to secure all objectives before the Russian weather set in. The invading force was split into 3 army groups with the ultimate goal being to reach the so-called AA line, this point being optimistically chosen as it contained a large majority of the agricultural land and natural resources that was needed for the war. Army Group North would sweep through the Baltic nations and then on towards Leningrad, today St. Petersburg. Army Group Center would strike through Belarus towards Moscow. Army Group South would naturally be tasked for the capture of Ukraine and Kiev. Within the first 4 weeks of Operation Barbarossa, the Wehrmacht had carved through Soviet territory with an unparalleled tenacity. Hundreds of miles of land were seized, with over 500,000 troops being captured or mortally wounded. Superior German tactics would give them a key advantage over the Soviets. Bewegungskrieg, or War of Movement, allowed rapid envelopments to occur with the focus of combined arms warfare. The Luftwaffe would bomb and strafe Soviet ground positions, before tanks would then roll through and continue the advance on the ground. The infantry would then mop up the resistance that remained. These envelopments would result in the Soviets finding themselves being completely surrounded, being ground down until capitulation. By mid-July, the city of Smolensk had fallen. Being only 250 miles from the Soviet capital, the road lay open towards Moscow. Hitler's generals suggested that now was the time to strike east. He, however, opted to secure his southern flank by capturing Kiev first. This then caused considerable time delays and losses for the Wehrmacht. Despite these setbacks, the capture of Kiev was confirmed by August 23rd. In amongst the maelstrom and cacophony that consumed the battlefield surrounding Kiev, the largest encirclement of the war had taken place. Over 500,000 Soviet troops were now captured. Some would break out to fight another day. However, of those who surrendered, most would never return home. In the north, Leningrad lay under siege from September 1941 onwards. As the city was cut off from the rest of the USSR, the populace began to starve, depicting the grimmest struggles for survival. Despite the siege lasting some 872 days, the city never fell. Once Hitler was happy that his flanks were secure, he allowed a renewed push towards Moscow. It took the German forces roughly 15 weeks to advance from Smolensk to within 25 miles of Moscow's city centre. As this time surpassed, the weather shifted and the Russian rain began to fall. Gone were the dusty dirt roads, now being replaced with swampy tracks. Despite these setbacks, the Germans advanced, and by December they found themselves at the gates of Moscow. The temperatures had dropped drastically, and the ill-prepared German forces endured the winter still kitted out for summer operations. Petrol froze inside vehicles, men froze inside their positions. As the snow fell, so did the troops for both sides, as the struggle continued to intensify. As Barbarossa stalled, Operation Typhoon was launched for the seizure of Moscow. The plan involved 2 pincer movements to envelop the city from the north and south. This failed to achieve its objectives due to increasingly stubborn resistance and worsening weather. On the 2nd of December, the Germans reached the town of Khimki in the northern suburbs of Moscow. Soviet forces then attacked and pushed them back out the very next day. As no further advances were made, this marked the closest they had come to Stalin, Khimki being only 23 kilometers from the Kremlin and Red Square. On the 5th of December, the Red Army counterattacked and pushed back the Germans 60 miles and in some places up to 150 miles, ending the Battle of Moscow for good. After the disastrous defeat at the end of 1941, Hitler redirected his attention to his growing logistical issues, the main one being the overall fuel shortage. Without the additional fuel, the war of movement that had brought him this far in the war could not be conducted, leaving them with no alternatives. Hitler needed to defeat the Soviets in a decisive battle while simultaneously replenishing the fuel gauge of his weary war machine. In the spring of 1942, German High Command planned for a new offensive, named Fall Blau or Case Blue. This was essentially Hitler's last gamble to win the war. With the little fuel that they had left, they sent Army Group South into the Caucasus region, the original target being to strike towards Astrakhan to cut off Soviet forces protecting the oil fields further south. Fall Blau was launched on the 28th of June, and as the summer heat returned, so did the renewed advances that seemed to mimic those of the previous year. 1.5 million German troops clashed against 1.8 million defending Soviets. Once the opening battles had occurred, Hitler altered the plan that was set in motion and decided to split Army Group South into Groups A and B. This was to achieve the simultaneous capture of the oil fields as well as the new target city of Stalingrad. Army Group A would swing south to secure the oil fields, whilst Army Group B was tasked to rid the Soviets of the Don River Basin. As the Soviets fell back, they came closer to the River Volga, where the city of Stalingrad was waiting for them. The battle for the city of Stalingrad began in the middle of September. At the time, little did either side know that the opening skirmishes foreshadowed what would become the deadliest battle in terms of human life. The grueling fight for the city that bared Stalin's name would be the deadliest in history. After the battle's conclusion, it is roughly estimated that 2.5 million casualties had occurred, in amongst the titanic struggle for a ruined city that had little strategic value at this stage of the war. Further south, Army Group A had captured the oil fields of Myakop the month prior on August 10th, and those at the city of Grozny were now within striking distance. As the campaign drove on and Stalingrad swallowed up all spare reinforcements, a large gap had developed between both army groups. The area consisted of large open plains that led on towards Astrakhan and then eventually the Caspian Sea. The Germans were cautious about this area and believed the Soviets may attack from this direction. As a result, the 16th Motorized Division was tasked to guard and probe the area. 4 patrols departed from the city of Elista on the 13th. Of these forces, a group of armoured cars drove to about 35 kilometres west of Astrakhan, reaching this distance on the 16th. After which, these units then camped on the banks of the Caspian Sea from the 16th to the 17th of August, which, if true, is the furthest easterly point that German ground troops would ever reach. As the group of men that was involved in this feat was so small, it is unlikely that any survived the war. Even if there was any survivors, the likelihood of any being alive today is astronomically low. We will never likely know whether this is legend or reality. However, we can categorically say that the Germans did in fact reach 35 kilometres west of the city of Astrakhan. I'll be going into more depth with analysis in part 2. If you found this video interesting or enjoyable, please leave a like, subscribe for more. Thank you.